Hey guys, welcome back to Yoga with Leona, your site for everything about yoga in breast cancer recovery. Today's video is going to be a little bit different in that we're not going to do any physical asana practices today, although we will talk a little bit about yoga as a mindfulness practice. But today I wanted to share with you a little more about some exciting things that I've been working on the last few months and give you a little introduction to a program called Mindfulness Based Cancer Recovery. So I discovered this program first as the book. So this is a book written by Dr. Linda Carlson and Michael Specka, who created this program. And I read the book first when I was going through my active cancer treatment. And honestly, my mind was blown. It has the most amazing, helpful information about how we can use mindfulness to improve our experience, to help us suffer less as we have to go through something challenging like cancer treatment, or honestly, any of the other, really challenging things that can happen in our life. So I read the book first when I was going through my own cancer treatment, and then into my recovery, as I started thinking about teaching yoga, I read the book several more times because there's so many helpful pieces of information in there about how we can, best improve our experience. So then I found out that I could become a trained facilitator in mindfulness-based cancer recovery so that I could really learn the program in more depth and learn how to help others to learn to use these skills. So I am excited to announce that I recently completed their facilitator training program and continuing to work with them to get better and better at sharing this information with people like you. So if you are interested in the idea of mindfulness and how it can help us improve our lives as it relates to cancer, but as it relates to just going through everything else that's stressful in life, then this video is for you. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the program, kind of wet your lips a little bit and let you see if it seems like something that you would be interested in. And then I'll give you some tips on how you might go about learning more. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, here we go. So Mindfulness-Based Cancer Recovery, that's the name of the program. And of course, as you know, you can find me here at yogawithleona.com if you want to find more of my information online. So let's just start with the background. So why do we need mindfulness in the first place? Well, as you know, if you have found this video, that means that cancer's touched your life in some kind of way. And cancer diagnosis, cancer treatment, whether it's you or a loved one, it can be totally overwhelming. It can be really stressful, really challenging, both to our physical bodies, but also to our minds and our emotions, even not like on a soul level. Having a cancer diagnosis can just totally rock the foundation of everything that we think that we are. And so, as if normal life weren't stressful enough, right? We all have so many stressors on top of our cancer situation. And so wouldn't it be great if we could learn some way to help us handle all of that better? Unfortunately, for most of us, our minds, tend to keep themselves kind of super busy all the time. We're ruminating on the past, regrets or things that maybe we didn't do right. We're worrying about the future. Our minds are just full of whys and what ifs and, judging and analyzing. We resist what's happening. We're sort of frustrated or angry. We've got this huge inner turmoil. And all of this is kind of our mind's natural way. It's just the way a lot of us operate. And it sort of leaves us in this whirlwind of tension and anxiety and chronic stress. And as you probably know, that's not a healthy place for us to be in our bodies, in our immune systems, for our minds, or for our healing. And sadly, too, most of this happens without us even realizing it, right? We're just going through our life and we think that's just the normal way things are. So what if I told you that there was a way to stop this vicious cycle of stress and anxiety and mental exhaustion that didn't require medication and that you could do in the privacy of your own home and throughout your day, would you be willing to give it a try? So that's what I want to talk to you about. The truth is there is a way, and it's really not actually that complicated. So let's talk a little bit more about mindfulness. So mindfulness is a general term for a group of techniques rooted in ancient practices that originated in India, but are now practiced by people around the world from all religious backgrounds and spiritual traditions. So mindfulness is not a religion in itself, just like yoga is not a religion in itself. People from any kind of background can benefit from these techniques. And in fact, I have read, and I believe to be true actually for myself, that practicing these sorts of techniques really can bring you closer and more in tune with whatever spiritual background you already have going into the practices. So mindfulness, in a very simple way, is just a way of being in which we're awake and aware of the present moment in an accepting, open, non-judgmental, and curious way. So the last part's a really important part of it. I'm going to talk about that in more detail in a few minutes, but it's just this idea of being open to the present moment, to whatever is happening in this moment without judging it or analyzing it. So mindfulness practices help us to cultivate this awareness so that we can choose which of our thoughts we engage with. So as we're going through our normal life, right, our mind is thinking and it's interacting with the world around us, and that's totally normal. But as you know, sometimes these really unpleasant or negative thoughts come through our minds, and we can learn to either choose to engage with those thoughts or choose not to, choose to just let them wash on by and engage something that's healthier, that helps us, to be in a better place. So these mindfulness practices help us to choose to either engage or to let go, so that we can avoid this habit of being swept away by these whirlwinds of thoughts and emotions, of fears and judgments, and, of falling into these traps of our old habits and maladaptive coping behaviors, right? That we all have, that we've learned as we grew up and as we've been through different life experiences. Those things are normal, but we can learn to do a better job so that we can improve our experience in the now. So this type of practice and this cultivating of awareness helps us to better cope with the challenges that we're going through, the challenges of living with cancer. And as we learn to choose these healthier strategies, that allows us to find more peace, more grace, more happiness in each moment of our lives, regardless of what those moments bring. Because as we all know, sometimes crappy stuff happens, going through cancer treatment isn't fun and it's hard. But if we can learn to find a little more peace in those moments, even the hard ones, instead of struggling against it and fighting against it, our experience can just be so much better. One of the things that Dr. Carlson likes to say that she said while I was going through the training is that it's known that suffering, the amount of suffering that we experience, is equal to the pain of the experience itself times our resistance to the pain. So it's not just the thing that we're going through that causes us to suffer, it's how we react to it and how much we resist it. And we create this situation of turmoil and stress and anxiety within ourselves. And with that sort of understanding and with these tools, we can learn to really lessen the amount of suffering. We can't take away the fact of what we're going through, but we can really improve the way we deal with it, and thereby lessen the suffering that we experience as a result. So mindfulness, as presented in this program, is, quote, and this is from the book, a healing practice grounded in over a decade of experience with thousands of people being treated by cancer. So this program is really amazing, and that's why I want to share it with you today. All right, let's keep going. So I want to mention briefly another program called Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction, or MBSR. And this is a very similar program, developed by a man named Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who's sort of described as the father of mindfulness. It was developed originally at the University of Massachusetts in the 1970s. And it's an 8-week program that teaches mindfulness practices. And it's been studied extensively and presented in the medical research literature, where they've studied it in lots of different populations, including things like mental illness, things like chronic pain, and all sorts of other conditions. And these scientific studies have reliably shown positive impacts on health and well-being of the people who participate. So mindfulness-based stress reductions program includes the following aspects, and you'll find it's very similar to the program that I'm going to talk to you about. So there are formal and informal mindfulness practices, and what that means is very simple. So formal mindfulness practice is things like sitting meditation. So you sit down and you specifically take 5, 10, 20 minutes to practice either meditation or maybe focused breathing. So these are formal times where you set out time to practice these exercises. Informal mindfulness practices are things that we might do throughout the rest of our day. So things like, for example, when you're driving, being more aware of your thoughts, or while you're washing the dishes, really just focusing on the experience of washing the dishes. So what does it feel like? How does the water feel as it rushes across your hands? How does your breath feel? How does your body feel? And these informal practices are things that we can begin to incorporate into our daily lives, and we can practice them throughout our day and really have these deep benefits from all of that. And then some of the specific formal practices are things like breath awareness, which is very simple. If you've done any kind of meditation, you know about that. Body awareness practices. So a body scan meditation is something that we use all the time. I actually use it in my yoga practices during Savasana a lot. And I'm going to show you a brief one today. Yoga, so physical yoga asana practices. And then this last part is a key part of the program, which I mentioned in the introduction. It's these 7 key attitudes of mindfulness. And I'm going to go into detail about them in a moment, but you can see the list there. So learning to train ourselves in the attitude in which we approach our lives. So things like non-judging and patience. I'll go through them in more detail in a few minutes. So that's MBSR, and you may have heard of this program and heard of Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn. Now, the program I want to talk to you about, and there's a picture again of the front of the book, is Mindfulness Based Cancer Recovery, which was developed by these 2 amazing people. And it originally was developed separately from MBSR, sort of in parallel, but then they realized that they shared so many aspects, and then further collaboration between the 2 groups resulted in the subsequent development of the program. So mindfulness-based cancer recovery, as it is now, is usually delivered as a 9-week program, given sort of in a group situation, so that the individuals that are participating can learn from each other's experience and sort of come through this learning together. So just like MBSR, MBCR includes formal and informal mindfulness practices, yoga and breathing exercises, and then what they call the helpful attitudes, which are very similar to the ones from before, meditation practices, and then just tons of practical advice on how to better react to our cancer situation, how to find healthier ways to respond to the stresses and the ups and downs of going through cancer. So this program is centered in learning to first sort of identify the ways that we normally react and the ways that we respond to our emotions or our situations or the stressors that we're going through, so that we can then learn to identify where we're maybe responding or reacting in a less healthy way, or in a way that results in some suffering. And once we can learn to identify when and how we do that, then we can decide whether that's an opportunity to change to a healthier response. And so the key is really just improving our awareness of our bodies, of our minds, and of how we experience our daily life. So both of these programs, as I mentioned, have been studied extensively in the medical and psychiatric literature, and there are lots of studies supporting their benefits. So one study, for example, looked at mindfulness-based cancer recovery in a broad population of cancer survivors and was shown to reduce mood disturbance, namely anxiety, depression, and anger. And look at this, it reduced mood disturbance by 65%. I mean, that's dramatic. So just imagine if something that you could practice in your own home could reduce your stress, anxiety, depression by 65% without even taking a pill. This program reduced overall stress symptoms by 31% and showed that it helped participants to feel more vigorous, to feel less fatigued, and to feel less confused as they're navigating their way through this cancer experience. So that was published in the year 2000, a long time ago. Other mindfulness-based cancer recovery studies have shown similar results. So this next reference here from 2013 was sort of a summary of multiple studies together. And then mindfulness-based stress reduction has been studied even more extensively. In this third bullet point here, there was a meta-analysis of 10 randomized controlled trials looking at mindfulness-based stress recovery in breast cancer survivors specifically, and again, showed significant benefits in fatigue, anxiety, depression, and sleep. So this has been proven over and over again to help people in all of these different situations. Interestingly, they're also looking at biologic correlates to the benefits. So not only what people say their experience is, but can we measure something in our blood, for example, stress hormones or things like that, to correlate with what people are feeling. And to this science nerd, it's so exciting and so interesting that they have been able to prove that as well. So have been able to show these correlations in our bloodstream to the favorable responses to this simple program. So that sounds great. How the heck do we do it? So there are formal programs in many communities that teach both of these programs. You might ask at your cancer center, or if they have a resource center where you see your doctor, you might be able to find a specific program in your community. And as I mentioned, mindfulness-based cancer recovery is traditionally taught in sort of a group setting. So you would meet like once a week or on some sort of interval with a group of other cancer survivors, and that's the way it is usually delivered. There are a couple of places that are looking at delivering it online now as well. And so that's what I'm hoping to develop for us too going forward, is a program that you can access online so that you don't have to go to a specific group setting to get these benefits. You can also just read the books yourself, and you can walk yourself through each of the steps in detail. And this is how I encountered it for the first time. You know, I found this book while I was going through treatment, and I just read the book. So a picture of both of the books is here below. Full Catastrophe Living is the title of Jon Kabat-Zinn's book. And it is an outstanding read, but it's really long, 600 plus pages. So it kind of depends on how much time and effort you want to commit to this. I love both of these books, but the Mindfulness-Based Cancer Recovery book is a much more concise and I would say approachable book. So, you know, see what sounds better to you, maybe get both of them if you're really interested and you want to really dive into this new way of living. So today I'm going to present you with a brief introduction to the MBCR program. So let's talk a little bit about basics of mindfulness again. So mindfulness is the simple practice of being aware of what's happening within and around us in the present moment without judging or evaluating our experience. So as I mentioned, you know, kind of think about how you go through life. Do you ever get in your car and you start to drive somewhere and then you're like, where am I going? You know, sometimes we're just on autopilot and we just kind of float through our life really unaware of the sort of richness of what's going on around us. And that's because we're off running away in our mind somewhere. So mindfulness is the practice of coming back to the present and being aware of what is happening around us and within us. And then with that important caveat of trying not to constantly be judging and analyzing the experience. So that's where we add the suffering, right? I love this analogy of saying, so there are two different ways to experience a rainy day, right? The mindful way to experience it would be to say, I see that it's raining. And we notice that. And it's sort of factual and simple. Instead of saying, oh my God, it's raining and my whole day is ruined. I hate it when it rains. Now I can't go swimming. And I had really counted on that. And that's kind of the way we normally do, right? We're constantly, overthinking, overanalyzing, and then we're causing suffering in ourselves, undue suffering. So instead of adding all that extra layer, we can just notice what's going on and experience it as it is. With a little more just sort of clarity and simplicity. And that's where that more peaceful experience comes in. So yeah, as you can see in the slides here, this is in contrast to our usual way of reliving the past, rehashing old experiences, worrying about the future, judging and analyzing our current experience. All of those things prevent us from really being present in the here and now. And experiencing the richness of everything that's going on around us. But they also really cloud our minds and cloud our perception. They, worsen our emotional reaction and create that undue suffering. So this program will teach us lots of different techniques that train us to go through our day from a different place, from a place of mindfulness, so that instead of getting into these big mental gymnastics about what's going on, we just simply are aware. And so the breathing practices, the yoga exercises, and the meditation techniques that we learn help us to develop clarity of perception, as well as a calmness and sort of a stillness and a peace in our body and in our mind. And ultimately, this allows us to recognize our habits so we can see clearly when we start to run off in one of those crazy downward spirals. We see that as it starts to happen, and we recognize how that makes us feel. We recognize when we're getting into one of those bad habits or those negative thought patterns that we all have. And so instead of flying off into outer space, we can decide whether that's in our best interest or not. And then we can practice implementing some positive change or transformation. And it's really so empowering when we learn that we can actually control this huge aspect of how we experience our life. So these are two images from the book, and you can see my little pink highlighter there. I highlighted these as I was reading the book for the first time. So on the left-hand side, you can see sort of the normal way that most of us experience or react to stress. So you can see there at the top, the little external stressor event. So whatever it is, maybe it's your doctor calls up and says, hey, your blood counts are too low for chemo this week, so we have to delay. So you can react to that. So you perceive the stressful event and you get into a panic mode, right? You feel stress. So here in this left-hand picture, you can see the stress reaction. Our body normally reacts to stress. This is a normal part of human physiology. Your different glands and organs secrete these stress hormones, and that creates this hyperarousal. So when that happens, our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, we tense up our muscles, and we feel stress, right? And that's all normal. But what's maybe not ideal is the normal way that we then react to that. So if we're not well trained and we're not able to see that, then we go into these cycles of dysregulation where, we allow ourselves to stay in that place of fight or flight in a chronic or long-term way. We get into these situations of sleep dysregulation or, anxiety or headaches. And then we develop these bad or maladaptive coping strategies. So we do things like, maybe drink or take pills or, develop a shopping addiction or, different things that we try to learn to do to distract ourselves from this stress that's over here, kind of like a cloud hanging over us. And then, as you know, all of those things have their own attendant downsides, maybe, overeating, stress eating, or sleeping too much, not getting our exercise. All of those things are ways that we can react poorly to stress. And when that happens, then we just worsen this sort of vicious cycle of negativity, and we can lead ourselves into, deeper places of unhappiness, and get into these cycles of depression and, loss of energy, worsens fatigue. It can cloud our minds and just really make for, overall yucky experience. So on the right-hand side is the bright side. This is what we can learn to do. We can learn to respond differently. So the stressful thing is still going to happen. The doctor is still going to call you and tell you that your blood counts are too low and you have to delay chemo. That's just life, right? This is what happens to us. Stressful things happen. And our body is still going to respond to that initially in a similar way. But this is the very first place. If we can learn to become aware of it, we recognize that. We say, oof, I feel my body. I feel my heart rate start to rise. I feel my muscles start to tense. At the very first sign of that, we can notice it with mindfulness, and we can become aware, and we can practice techniques that help us, instead of going up into that vicious cycle of tension, to bring it down. We practice breathing. We practice relaxation, or a body scan, or some kind of meditation. Maybe we go for a walk. And then we nip in the bud that vicious cycle of negativity. And by using these practices, we're able to then trigger a relaxation response where we go, okay, this is what's happening, but I'm going to work with it. And it's no problem. Actually, it's not a big deal if I have to delay my chemotherapy till next week. And then we can see clearly, the opportunities for better ways to deal with whatever the situation is. So this is the power of these simple practices. And this is what we're going to learn how to do. So let's talk about the helpful attitudes. This is one of the sort of, founding principles of the whole program, is learning to go through our life with a slightly different attitude toward things that happen to us. So the helpful attitudes, the first one is non-judgment. So this is the idea of sort of being an impartial witness to our experience instead of being so caught up in it, sort of observing what happens in the external world as well as in the internal world without judging and analyzing it. So instead of saying, this is such a pain, I hate it when this happens, and this is miserable and I'm so frustrated, instead just saying, well, this is what's happening today, in an impartial way. So non-judging is the first one, and it is not easy, but with practice we can get a lot better at it. The second one is patience. If you're going through a cancer experience, you know how important this one is. So sort of the idea of understanding and accepting that things have their own schedule for unfolding, and that trying to control that or force things to happen on our preferred schedule just doesn't work, and it creates more suffering, right? The next one is beginner's mind. And this is the idea of sort of seeing things from a perspective of openness and curiosity, seeing things as if for the first time, instead of from a perspective of knowing better. Like, I'm an expert in this and I know that it's better if I XYZ. Sort of seeing things from this open, curious perspective, like, okay, maybe this is actually better than what I thought was supposed to happen. So seeing things as if through the eyes of a child, with openness and, curiosity for this, potential new way that things are going to unfold. The next one is trust. So trust can be in so many different ways. First, this idea can be sort of trusting in our own intuition, in our own inner wisdom, in trusting in our own basic goodness, that we don't need to be so negative and so, frustrated, that, we really have the ability to work through these challenges, that we can trust ourselves that whatever happens, it doesn't have to be a crisis, because we have the ability, we have the inner strength, we have the intelligence to work through whatever happens. The idea of trust can also include sort of a trust in a higher power if you're so inclined, or just a trust in the universe that, things always have a way of working themselves out, even if in the moment you don't see how that's even possible. Just this idea of trusting that, even if you feel like this is the worst thing that could possibly happen, knowing that in some kind of way things will work out. The next one is non-striving. And, this is the idea that the goal of our experience is to just be, not to always be doing something or striving for that next moment, or to always be looking, forward to some other moment in which we might be happy, thinking, well, when I finish this next month, or when I get that new car or get that promotion, then I can be happy. So instead, sort of shifting to an idea of, why don't I just be happy with wherever I am today? Because today is what I'm experiencing right now. So this idea of letting go of the idea of always striving for something else, simply to be conscious of where and how we are today, and to learn to be okay with it. Even if it's maybe not the best thing, maybe we're feeling a little sick to our stomach today, or we've got some pain today, just recognizing that that's what today is. And, it's okay, because as we were just talking about in trust, we can handle it, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. The next one is acceptance. So this is kind of ties in with the same thing, sort of seeing things as they are and accepting that for what it is. So whatever it is the way it is. And we can resist and we can struggle against it all we want, but usually that doesn't change the fact of what is, right? So, accepting the truth of our situation sort of allows us to stop struggling and beating our head against a wall, to try to change things that are beyond our control. And this really is super freeing, right? To sort of let go of that struggle to control things can just make you feel so free and open, just accepting that, this is what it is today. And then the last one is letting go. And this is also known as non-attachment, which you hear me talk about a lot. That's a big one in yoga philosophy. And this is sort of the idea of recognizing and welcoming the ever-changing nature of experience. So, often we get in our mind some idea of how we want things to be, and we get so attached to that then when it changes, which life always changes, then we get ourselves so upset. So instead of allowing ourselves to be so gripping and so attached to some certain way that we think things should be, if we can learn to just let go of that and be open to whatever happens, and open to knowing that things inevitably change, that can again create this sort of sense of peace and of, more openness to letting the joy in and the happiness that's there, really, if we just don't cover it up with our mind and all of our judgments and our stresses and anxiety. So, by practicing all of these attitudes, we allow ourselves to find a little more peace and harmony with whatever's going on, no matter how stressful and difficult and challenging it might be. We can learn to live in that space with, peace and joy, even though it's a difficult situation. And man, doesn't that sound like a great thing? All right. So with that in mind, let's practice. We're going to take a really brief sample of a couple of the introductory practices that we use throughout the Mindfulness Based Cancer Recovery program. So these two practices are called mindful breathing, which is very simple. And I'm going to take us through a short mindful breathing practice. And then the second one is called a body scan. And this is sort of a meditation practice that, again, if you've practiced yoga with me, you've probably experienced a short body scan meditation in Savasana, because I love to use it in Savasana. So we're going to take a few minutes. We're going to take a very brief sample of each of these practices, just so that you can get an idea of how simple and easy they are. So first, mindful breathing is really just the practice of being aware of your breath. And it sounds kind of silly almost, because we're all breathing all the time, right? If we're not breathing, we're dead. So we all have been breathing for years and years, and most of the time we're totally unaware of it. We don't notice how our breath is. We don't pay attention to it. And the simple practice of bringing your awareness to your breath can really have profound effects in relaxation, in sort of allowing you to get out of that vicious cycle of the mind, allowing you to get out of your head and just drop into that place of, where there's just this inner calm of your lungs going up and down. And it's so simple. You can do it anywhere. You can do it when you're driving. You can do it sitting at the waiting room at the doctor's office when you're freaking out about waiting for your test results or whatever. Mindful breathing is something that you can do anywhere and everywhere. But you can also do it in a formal setting. So sitting at home, setting your timer maybe for 5 minutes at first, and then, increasing the duration of your practice as it gets easier for you. So many of these practices, it's important to recognize at the beginning that it's going to feel a little bit challenging at first. So we are used to constantly doing stuff, right? Getting up and running and feeling like, if you sit still for 5 minutes, you're wasting time. So we need to train ourselves to get used to doing these practices, and to get ourselves used to it, instead of thinking, what should I be doing after this? You're trying to focus on your breath, and instead your mind is going to your grocery list or to whatever else you're supposed to be doing after that. So it is a practice. So please know that, and don't get down on yourself if it's very common for your mind to run off. That's normal. That's why we're doing this, is so that we can train ourselves to be, less in that mode of letting the mind run off. So as we begin mindful breathing, remember that if your mind runs away and you notice all of a sudden that you're running off to your grocery list, that's normal. Don't get frustrated and don't get down on yourself. That's your sign that you're becoming aware, right? You noticed that your mind started to run off, and that's the opportunity to bring your mind back to the breath. All right, so let's practice mindful breathing just for a few minutes. So you're going to come to a comfortable seat, whatever that looks like. You can also do this lying down, but I think seated is a little bit better. And you're going to try to just stretch your spine nice and tall. So make sure you're in a comfortable position so that you can stretch your spine nice and tall. And then I like to either lower my gaze or close my eyes. And then for mindful breathing, you're just going to bring your awareness to your breath. So just begin to notice the sensations of your breath. Notice the air coming in and out of your lungs. So at first, we're not trying to control the breath. We're just noticing the sensations of our breath. So you're not trying to slow or deepen the breath here at first in this practice. You're just noticing the natural sensations of your breath. You might notice the sensation of air moving in and out at your nostrils. Maybe you feel a little coolness at the inside of your nose. Maybe you feel your ribs slightly rise and fall with each subsequent breath. Maybe you feel the belly gently expand and then contract as the air moves in and out of your lungs. And as you begin to tune into the breath, you may notice that the pace or the depth of the breath does change. You may notice that the breath begins to slow and deepen. But if you don't notice that, don't worry about it. Remember non-judgment and non-attachment to whatever you're feeling. The purpose is just to be aware, to tune in to your breath moving in and out of the lungs. Continue breathing in this way. And remember, if you notice your mind wandering or drifting off, if you notice yourself open your eyes to check your timer, how long have I been going? Just bring yourself gently back to the breath. If you notice yourself feeling a little fidgety, maybe your legs start to feel a cramp or a discomfort, don't worry about it. It's totally normal. Fidget if you need to, and then come back to the breath. Chest gently rising and falling. Breath moving in and out. And you can continue like this for just as long as you need. All right, so go ahead and flutter your eyes open if you're ready to do so. So you can see how really, truly simple mindful breathing is. It's all about just awareness, about practicing directing our awareness to anything. But in this practice, we're using the breath as the focus. And as we do that, we begin to develop this amazing strength at directing our awareness. So we're able to notice when the mind runs off, or we're able to notice when we start to get into a swirl of emotion or reactivity, or we start to get frustrated at something that happens, and we come back to our breath, right? So this is a trick, a tool that you can use every moment of your life. You know, if someone in your family starts to get on your nerves or get under your skin, you can notice that. And before you fly off the handle and say, shut up, you crazy person, you know, you can stop yourself from doing that, and you can switch into mindful breathing. And then you'll notice that brings about some clarity. Just having that pause of a few breaths as we go through our life, you know, can stop us from, you know, getting into trouble or getting into places that are unpleasant. So that's mindful breathing. It's so simple. If you decide that you want to, you know, pursue deeper training in mindfulness-based cancer recovery, you know, you'll get into longer practices and more detailed instruction about how to practice mindful breathing. But that's the basic of it. It's so simple. All right, now let's practice the second one. So this is the body scan meditation. So it's a similar practice, but it's practicing moving our awareness around the body. So instead of just keeping our awareness on the breath, we're going to move our awareness around different places of our body through a sort of guided meditation. And at first, you can use a recording of a guided body scan meditation. And there are lots of them out there. You can find them on YouTube or wherever. But I'm going to have one at Yoga with Leona as well. That'll be my own guided body scan meditation. And you can use that at first until you get good at the practice. And then eventually you don't even need the guide, right? Like once you get good at doing this, you can just practice it on your own. So if you want to let's take a few minutes to practice a short, abbreviated body scan meditation so you can get an idea of what it feels like. Just by way of brief background, before I knew anything about mindfulness-based cancer recovery, in my yoga teacher training, I learned to do a body scan meditation as part of our savasana, or our restful relaxation at the end of practice. And so, you know, this is a common practice used in lots of different traditions, and that's because it really works. I remember the first few times I was led through a guided body scan meditation by my yoga teacher, and I was just blown away at the relaxing effect of it. And so it's, again, a really simple practice, but once you do it a few times, you'll realize how powerful it is. And it's this idea of just getting our mind out of its chronic, you know, crazy gymnastics and into the body, into a place that's simple and peaceful. All right. So for body scan meditation, you can also take that seated if you're comfortable in your seated position, but I usually take these lying down as I would in Savasana. So if you want to adjust your position to a comfortable place on your back or a comfortable place seated, take a moment or so to find that position. Make sure you're comfortable. If you need to prop your knees or prop your legs, feel free to do that. Just getting into a position where you're nice and comfortable. And then take a couple of deep breaths in and out. And again, you can let your eyes gently close or just lower to a comfortable position. And then we'll begin. And again, remembering as you go through the body scan meditation, if you find your mind wandering off, don't worry about it. That's totally normal. Just gently come back to the sound of my voice and to the place where we're focusing our awareness in that moment. So let's begin by bringing our awareness to our eyebrows. So noticing what's going on in the sensation around your eyebrows. Do you feel tension there? Are they furrowed? Or do they feel nice and relaxed? And in the body scan meditation, we're not asking you to do anything. So we're not asking you to consciously relax or release any of these muscles. Just notice what you're feeling. If your body naturally does relax, that's fine. And you might just notice that as well. So again, tuning in to the sensation around your eyebrows. And then let's move our awareness to our jaw. Notice again, are you clenching your jaw? Do you feel tension there? And then moving your awareness to the muscles of your neck, noticing any sensation that you feel in your neck. And then let's bring our awareness to the right shoulder, and then to the right elbow. Next, bring your awareness to the right wrist, and then the right hand fingers. Just focusing your awareness on the sensations in your right hand. And then bringing the awareness back to the right elbow, to the right shoulder. And then slowly moving your awareness across the body, this time to the left shoulder, noticing any sensations you feel in the left shoulder. And then the left elbow, the left wrist, the left hand, and the left hand fingers. Then moving your awareness back through the left elbow and the left shoulder. And then let's bring our awareness to the front side of our chest wall. Notice any sensations you feel in your chest wall. Maybe you have tightness there, or you have some scar tissue, or maybe even pain. If you notice pain, try to notice it in a non-judgmental way. Notice the sensation of the pain. How does it feel in your body? Does it feel sharp or dull? Just noticing without too much analysis. And then let's bring our awareness to the muscles of our upper back, to the mid back and the low back. Notice any sensation you feel in these areas. And then bring your awareness to the right hip, to the right thigh, the big strong muscles on the front and the back side of the right thigh, to your right knee, to the right ankle and foot, And then back to the right knee, to the right hip, and then crossing over the midline, let's bring our awareness to the left hip. Remember, if your mind wanders, just come gently back, bringing the awareness this time to the left knee, to your left ankle, and the left foot. And then coming back to the left knee and the left hip. And then let's bring our awareness to the base of our spine. Notice any sensation you feel. Move your awareness to the center of your pelvis. And then to the center of your abdomen. Bring your awareness then to the heart center, to the center of your chest, and notice anything you feel. Again, letting go of any judgment of the sensation, just noticing it in a matter-of-fact way. And then bringing your awareness to the center of your throat. To the space in between your eyebrows. And then to the crown of your head, noticing any sensations you feel. And then finally, bringing your awareness to the entire body at once, noticing any sensations that you feel. Perhaps you feel a buzzing energy moving about the body. Perhaps you feel a heaviness as your body sinks into the space that you're resting upon. Perhaps you don't feel much at all. Whatever it is, just notice it and then let it go. And then rest here, breathing for a few moments longer. Resting in awareness. Awareness of this moment. Awareness that in this moment, whatever is happening around you, that inside of you is a space of peace and calm that you can retreat to whenever you need. You can use these practices of breath awareness, of body awareness to allow you to drop into that place whenever you need. All right, and when you're ready, then start to wake your body back up from this body scan meditation. You might slowly take some movements of your hands and feet and maybe turning your head side to side to wake the body back up. And then if you were lying down, you can slowly roll onto one side and come back up to a seat so that we can finish our introduction. That was a very brief example or sample practice of a body scan meditation. And these are the sorts of practices that we learn in this course, in this program of Mindfulness Based Cancer Recovery. So in the program, we're taught these practices and we practice them regularly throughout the program. So over the course of the 9-week program, we're instructed to do these practices at home on our own. And, we set aside a specific time each day. Maybe it's just 5 minutes at first until you get used to the practice. But everybody's got a little time each day, right? Instead of scrolling on Facebook or something, maybe set aside this time for yourself to do these simple practices, to learn, to train your body to be able to shift your awareness away from stress and reactivity and anxiety into this place of peace and calm, into your body and into your breath, and to really discover the power that we really have inside of us. So, you may notice just after a few days or a week or two of doing these practices that you are able to be in that place a little bit more as you go through your life. You may begin to notice, to be a little more aware when you start to slip into these places of, irritability or anxiety, and that you're able to bring yourself back more quickly and able to choose how you respond to your daily experience. I'm going to just mention briefly mindful movement. If you're here at Yoga with Leona, you know about yoga. And so, these programs like Mindfulness Based Cancer Recovery, they use yoga as a big part of the training, because yoga, as we know, is an awesome mindfulness practice. It's a mindful movement. It forces us to pay attention to our bodies, to our positions, to the sensations of our muscles and joints as we move through the practice. So yoga is a fabulous mindful movement. If yoga doesn't sound good to you, or you have some reason that you don't want to practice yoga, mindful walking is also a really simple practice. Just paying attention in extreme detail as we walk. So not walking to get anywhere. In fact, many people who practice mindful walking walk in a circle so that they're not trying to go anywhere. They're just walking for the experience of paying attention to the walking. Although if you have some reluctance to yoga, I encourage you to try it anyway, because I think you'll be surprised. You don't have to be flexible to do yoga. You don't have to be an acrobat to do yoga. All you have to do is be able to breathe and focus on your body. So mindfulness-based cancer recovery teaches some specific yoga practices, so some fairly gentle yoga practices, or you can find yoga practices that suit you best in lots of different places. Of course, Yoga with Leona is a good place to find them if you're so inclined. So what now? Gosh, that sounds interesting. If your interest has been piqued into how mindfulness might help you navigate through your experience a little bit better, what can we do now? So you could pursue more in-depth training, enroll in one of these programs, either at a local center near you or online. Or you can, get the book and just start practicing on your own. Just take 5 minutes and then build slowly from there to practice mindful breathing or practice the body scan. Or when you're doing your yoga practice or whatever exercise you like to do, just practice being mindful. And practice those helpful attitudes as you go through your life. And you'll start to notice the benefits. I promise you will. So however you want to pursue it, give yourself this gift of mindfulness and see how it can really transform your daily experience for the better. All right. So that's it. Thank you for your attention, for your openness to considering this possibility of mindfulness. Shoot me a message if you're interested. I'm going to be working on developing this online program that will become available to you hopefully in a few months once I get all the videos recorded. All right. Have an awesome day. Namaste.